the time allotted, which is no more than 45 minutes. So today we are going to talk to you about how to buy legal software and talk about the do's and the don'ts. So just a couple of housekeeping areas. You'll see at the top of Microsoft Teams, for those that haven't used it before, there's a Q&A button. If you've got any questions that you wish to ask, please feel free to use this area and we'll try and get through as many of those questions as we possibly can. If we can't answer, we run out of time and we can't answer those questions, then we'll follow up with people direct in terms of any questions that you have. Additionally, where I am, there are no fire alarms. There's no fire alarm scheduled today. So if there is a fire alarm, I'll have to exit. Jo has a little dog with her and she's on her best behaviour. I think Mahesh doesn't have any fire alarms either. So we'll crack on. So introductions. My name is Tom Wormold and I am the Managing Director here at Quill. And before joining Quill, I was Operations Director of a large law firm and have had many different roles in different law firms from a technology perspective. So I have been on the receiving end of having to navigate what can be quite a complicated process to try and find legal technology and legal solutions for law firms. So the whole purpose of today's session is try and help you and give you some helpful helps and hints and tips and do's and don'ts on how to select the right software for your law firm. Delighted to welcome Mahesh Patel to the panel as well. Mahesh has recently navigated again this minefield himself with the assistance of Jo Poole, who is one of our regional sales consultants. Again, Jo has got a lot of experience, having worked in lots of different technology companies prior to joining Quill. So we'll try and keep this relevant and try and keep it to the timescales that we have. So Quill as a company has been around for over 45 years. We have over 120 specialist staff here to help law firms with both software and services. We have over 750 firms using our software, over 11,000 individual users using our software day in, day out. And in December last year, we launched MyQuill, which is our 5th iteration of our browser-based practice case document management system with integrated accounts as well. So that's a very short précis about Quill. As I said previously, Mahesh has joined us from Stenfield Sisters. Stenfield Sisters are a multi-disciplinary law firm based in London and Norwich. And Mahesh has got a vast amount of experience owning Stenfield since 2004, and as I say, recently navigated through this minefield before selecting MyQuill as his solution going forward. Next slide, please, Jim. So for Quill, there's lots and lots of information. If you go on our website and obviously Orange Rag and other publications, you can find out more about Quill and all of the software and the services that we provide. Lots of white papers and ebooks and training on there as well if you wish to go and have a look. So please do feel free to have a look at our website. So today's agenda, obviously I'll give a very brief overview and set the scene in terms of procurement of legal software, and then I'll hand over to Jo in terms of walking through the five key steps as Jo sees it, and Mahesh in terms of selecting and finding the right software, and with a Q&A session between Jo and Mahesh before we wrap up just before 1:45, hopefully. So why should you use legal software and why can it be a challenge? Well, every law firm will have a different perspective on this. At the core of every law firm, as far as I'm concerned, is legal compliance. You've got to comply with Sisters Accounts rules. You also want to be efficient. You want to make sure that you're providing the best customer service that you possibly can to your customers. So choosing the right solution is absolutely key in that respect. There's lots of different providers who provide lots of different flavors, looks and flavors of software, whether it's on-premise solution, browser-based, cloud-based, and it can be quite confusing. So Jo I'll hand over to Joe now, who will go into more detail in terms of the 5 steps as we see it to find the right legal software. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Tom. Hi everyone, my name's Jo and I currently work for Quill, and I've been selling legal software now for as unbelievable as it may sound, but for over 25 years. I've had quite a lot of experience in that time dealing with law firms that are either starting to buy software from scratch, or they're in a position where they've already got software but they're looking to leave that and start again. And I think the big problem is, or the big worry and concern for people that already have systems, is that there's always going to be a pain element in then leaving the system that you've got and moving to the right one. But there's a lot of things that you should look for in doing that. And we're going to discuss some of those steps that we think you should go through now. I mean, firstly, you've got to review your current system and your processes. I think that's first and foremost, and it's the best place to start. You know, conducting a thorough review of where you are, why you want to leave, you know, what is working, what isn't working. They may seem like silly questions, but they're obvious questions that need to be answered. I think if you're using a software solution and you're not happy with it, then the next system that you go to really should be the solution to your problems. So if you think about what isn't working, if you think about what you do need, and then you identify those pain points, it makes the whole process a lot easier. So, you know, by looking at buying a solution, some of the obvious questions I probably ask myself is, what do I like about my current system that I want to change into my next one? What do I least like about my current system and the processes that it has? You know, what new features do I want? How are we going to access the system? You must have a general idea of what the current pain points are. You know, expose your pain, be honest with yourself. Have you got slow back office tasks? Do you want to go paperless? Are you not happy with your support system? Are you looking for, you know, have you got limited flexibility and scalability? Just be honest with yourself and, you know, ask yourself these questions and compile a list. We've got Mahesh on the call, and I've recently dealt with Mahesh. And, you know, so really, what would be the thing that prompted you to start looking for a new software supplier, Mahesh?
So I've always been an early adopter of technology. I've been using case management systems since 90s, when they were very rudimentary. But in terms of changing from our current system, the main issue we were having is that we were a premises-based software, and with what we found over COVID and since then were speed issues. The staff were coming in, dialing in remotely, and then trying to upload the program, and it would hang. There was just, it would take ages for stuff to upload. So that was the biggest issue. There were other things in the background, as you said, in terms of support, scalability, and cost. Cost was an issue. The license fees for our existing system were quite high. But the main issue for us was we wanted to move over to a web-based system, and that was important for us.
Excellent. So step 2, ask around. May sound obvious, may sound silly, but communication is key. You know, within your firm, you should actually speak to a lot of different stakeholders. If you've got IT managers, obviously you'll have fee earners, you've got your legal accounts and your legal cashiers to speak to, and your partners. And every single one of them is going to want something different. You can be guaranteed of that. So never let a tail wag a dog. Always look at what everybody within the firm would want. And then I think it's really a case of trying to find a system that's going to tick as many boxes as what you possibly can get out of everything. Also, take into consideration a lot of the different skill sets that people have. So, you know, go to your people, ask them. And again, ask them the same questions. What do you like about the current system? If you had a new system, a new solution, what would you hope to see on day one and going forward of when you open that software up? You know, how are you getting on with managing your caseloads, the partners? Can you see what your fee earners are doing? Have you got this all this information accessible to you? What new features and functionality do you really want to see? You're going to expect a lot of different answers, but as I say, take all of them into consideration. And I think that's where you really start to look then at what systems that you should be looking into. So Mahesh, relating to that, did you do the same thing? Who in your team did you ask to get involved in that process?
I initially didn't consult anybody about changing the system. I'd made a decision that the system needed changing. And once my co-director, once we made that decision, it was at that stage that we then went to our fee earners and support staff and asked them what they liked about the current system, what they didn't like, what they would like it to do. So as you say that. My IT manager, it's an outsourced company, but they've been very skeptical about cloud-based and web-based systems. He likes to have control of the server, you know. So I had quite a few meetings with him, trying to convince him this is how we needed to go. So yeah, he was a big input. Legal cashier was a big input in terms of keeping real-time information on the system. But yeah, we did. I mean, fee earners, they don't like change. But that having been said, a lot of them were so sick of what we had that they were happy to go with something else. And they made some suggestions as to what they would like the new system to do. So that was in the back of my mind when deciding who to go with.
And did you ask them if they'd used any of the systems out there as well? Did you ask them what systems they'd previously used?
Yeah. We had a couple of people who had used Quill. We had a couple of people who had been at firms that had used another very well-known accounts case management system. So we did consult those. I consulted Dr. Google and looked at review sites of various systems. So yeah.
Right. Step 3, narrow down your search and choose a vendor. So when you start on this journey of looking for a new vendor, you will notice that there's quite a lot of us out there. And it's a little bit like when you go to buy your car insurance, pet insurance. Do you want to go through the whole list? Probably not. I think what a good thing to do is to refer to articles out there, you know, look at the things that are best for you to consider, how you're going to deal with that. You know, I think if I was going to advise someone to look at some systems, I probably wouldn't choose more than 3. I think it's, you know, I think 3 is a good number to start with, for different reasons. Take a look at them, see what they can offer. And, you know, from that 3, then maybe shortlist down to 2, or from that 3, you may know who your 1's going to be. But things, you know, to consider when you're speaking with these vendors is what's the company's experience. I think a big thing if you're already using a system is the data migration. Believe you and me, if you go with a vendor that gets that wrong, you are on a hide into nothing and your whole experience is going to be quite hellish. So I think for me, I'd probably want a lot of comfort in how this firm deals with data migrations. I'm actually horrified at the amount of firms or software suppliers who actually don't do a test of data migration before they do the final one. You know, what's the reputation of that firm like? Are they privately owned? Have they just been bought out? It's been quite a crazy, incestuous time lately where it seems that your software provider's probably just, maybe if you've just signed up for them even, it's just been bought by another one. So what direction is that going to get in? And ask your peers, you know, speak to other firms, get some references. I think cost is a big one as well. Cost and scalability is huge. I mean, I know some firms that I've come across that I've helped that in the pandemic weren't able to scale down the users they had while people was on furlough. So they were still paying for, say, 50 licenses and they only had 5 people working. You know, so look for a vendor that's going to understand how you work and understand that there is scalability, that you can add people on, you can take them off. And then, you know, your exit plan's also important. I mean, no one likes to talk about divorce before you get into bed with them, but realistically, this is something that you should be thinking about. So if you were to leave a provider, how easy is it for you to get your data from them, for example? You know, these are really some important things that you should be thinking about. And of course, security. So where is your data held, etc. Because most people are now looking for cloud-based or browser-based products. You know, many years ago, 10 years ago, you would have had to convince people to do this, but the pandemic gives us all a great answer of why you should do that. But going back to Mahesh, before I go on too much about that, how did you ultimately make up your mind on who you wanted to go with?
Right, so my first port of call was Law Society recommended software providers. There are a lot on there, so I did spend some time going through them, then whittled it down to 5. I know you said 3, but whittled it down to 5, and then had demos with those 5 potential providers. 3, although they're on that Law Society approved suppliers, didn't have integrated accounts packages for law firms. You could have used that software for anything. If you're a vet or a doctor or a painter and decorator, they were just generic systems. So they were out, and then it was down to 2. And what I think swung it for me, apart from Joe's persuasiveness, was the scalability, and B, the amount of readily available management information that was on there. So as Joe said earlier about, do you know what your fee earners are doing? Profitability of fee earners, profitability across different types of work, that sort of thing. So that swung it for me in the end.
Step 4, negotiating 10 common mistakes to avoid. You would be shocked at how many lawyers do not read a contract before they sign into it. It never ceases to amaze me. Quite often, there's some things that you should avoid that people don't realise. So, you know, they're on the slide. I'm not one for sitting here reading information that's on a slide that you're probably sitting here reading right now whilst I'm talking to you. But, you know, really, I think read your contract is the best advice. Have an exit strategy. Make sure you know what you're signing up to. Just get everything on this list ticked off, basically, because if you don't, then you could be in for a nasty surprise at that time. It's all covered in the ebook that we give out. So I think we've given a copy of this at the time as well. Step 5, so change management. I've been selling software for over 25 years, and I'm not going to lie to you, I think change management should and is the most important thing for you as a law firm that you have to consider. Mahesh has already said it. Fee earners do not like change. Fee earners aren't different to anybody else in the world. Who does like change? However, change doesn't always have to be scary. I think if you choose the right vendor, then they should have teams in place that help you with this. They should put their arms around you. They should have extensive knowledge of knowing you as a law firm, what your fees are going to be. And I think really it's our job as much as your job as the person that's the champion of this product to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for you. But definitely it's something that's going to be your biggest pushback, you know, so you can again see the slide, choosing the right vendor to make sure that it's easy to use for everybody. The easier the system is to use, the more people are going to adopt to it. You could spend a fortune on a system. It could have all the bells and whistles, pay hundreds of pounds for the license. You'll probably use about 5% of it because they'll think it's too scary to use. So look into that and find a system that you think everyone's going to find easy to adapt to. The implementation and migration process, again, do your homework. Make sure your vendor knows what they're doing here. Make sure they do test conversions for you. You know, make sure that there's someone on that team that understands a law firm and how you work. Again, it's worrying when they don't, or they give it to a third party provider to do for you. The training is essential, and really this is where we can help you as a vendor. So personally here at Quill, all of our training staff and all of our support staff have been experienced legal cashiers rather. They've not only got technical ability, but they also have cashier and an expert knowledge of how it is to work in a law firm, and I really think that's essential. And then get them used to the new normal. You know, don't make it scary for them. You know, this is a big thing, it is a big change, but change doesn't always have to be scary, and if you've done all the steps before this, then change will be a good thing for you. So just a quick last question from me to Mahesh, really. So what have you learned, and what were the 3 tips that you'd give anyone looking for software supplier in today's market, because it's quite a scary place?
It is. As I say, I think your first port of call should be the approved law society suppliers, but whittle that down because there are a lot out there. Secondly, my advice would be, before you talk to any other supplier, download Quill's ebook on what questions to ask, because it's very, very useful. And thirdly, you will find, if you haven't found it already, that most presenters will, when giving the demo, they have their script and they'll rush through it. But don't be afraid to ask, does it do this? Why doesn't it do that? How does it do that? Jo was very accommodating when I kept interrupting her while she was in full flow. But it's important because you know what your firm needs. And as Jo said, even if you only use 5% of a system, you've got to make sure that it does what you want to do within that 5%. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And you know, a lot of them couldn't answer questions that I put to them. They said, we'd come back to you, or so they weren't that au fait with their own product, to be honest with you. So yeah, take one thing away from it: ask questions. Make sure it does what you want it to do.
Cheers, Mahesh. Thanks very much. That's me done. What I'm going to do now is hand you back over to Tom.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks, Mahesh. I've made quite a lot of notes myself in terms of relating this back to my experience as well, and it's quite interesting. One of the key points that I picked up on your conversation is it's around that partnership as well. Do you trust the firm, and do other people in the marketplace trust that supplier as well? So I think in the legal industry, it's very incestuous. Everybody knows each other. Everybody works quite closely with each other. So don't be afraid to ask within the peer group as well what works well for them. What software have they got? Mahesh, it's really good in terms of your conversations with your team, because that's quite unusual in a lot of firms. The decision's made at the top and it's implemented, and then it becomes quite difficult because you're on the back foot in terms of where people aren't bought into or buy into the process of new software. And it just reminded me of a CPD event I went on myself a little while ago, and the key takeaway that I took away from that CPD event was communication, and the change curve. With any change in any workplace, it's really, really important to get that communication right. And as you've said, Mahesh, in terms of speaking to every level in your organization and understanding what their problems are in terms of existing software and what they want to get out of new software is really, really key. So ask those questions of your own team, ask those questions in the marketplace, as you've done, Mahesh. Look at reviews. You know, people, there are honest reviews out there of all the different software. There's lots of sites out there to look at as well, and ask questions if someone comes in to demonstrate the software. Don't be afraid to ask the question and ask for reference sites. Ask for test systems. Are they going to do a test migration? And one of the key areas that I've heard in the marketplace is Not everybody employs their own data converters or their own training team. So we see that as a very key, important part, that we own the process in terms of the client's data. We are custodians of that data whilst we are translating it and importing it into our system. So we want to make sure that's done. We would never think of outsourcing that. So those are quite key questions as well, in terms of, well, how does the data flow through? What happens if there's a mismatch? How do we work through? Every system's different. There are always questions as part of a data conversion, but if it's all about that communication and the partnership and that trust that you build up. One area that I didn't see that was covered on one of the slides, Joe, was, double check the contract in terms of fee increases. Is that clearly stated? And the exit as well. These are the bits that you don't think of on the way in, but can catch up with you a year in, 2 years in, or if you're thinking of moving to another provider. So it's really, really good to hear that interaction. So key takeaways for me is, do your research, go into this with your eyes open and think of the future as well, and engage your team. And the key don'ts are, avoid those negotiation traps, the finance agreements, or the uncapped fee increases, and also almost pressure selling as well. You should be able to make a decision in your own time, unless there is a reason for your own practice to make that decision. Maybe you've got a deadline yourself in terms of holidays, or your service provider is, your service agreement is coming to an end. So have those conversations as part of the demonstration. What is the timescale for implementation? How long will it take? What other support do you provide? Can I have a choice of, is it in-person training? Is it e-training? Is it webinars? What works for me and my firm? So don't be afraid to ask in that respect. And I think that's been proven from what you said, Mahesh, and other conversations that we've had as well. And again, read the contract. Lots and lots of lawyers that I've spoken to say, oh, I'm the least insured, and I don't really do contracts. So do make sure you read contracts. So as Joe has said earlier on, we have, and Mahesh has got a copy of this as well. We have an ebook. And we have a full suite of information on the Law Society in terms of articles as well. We do these webinars on different subjects regularly. I can't see that any questions have been asked so far, but lots of Q&As are within that ebook that will be sent to you at the end. We'll also send out this recording to everybody as well, so you can rewatch this in your own time. And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions. Mahesh's details have been put on at the beginning of the slide, which will be shared on our website as well. Mahesh has kindly agreed to take questions from people if they want to ask a question. Send any emails through to either our sales team, or directly through to Joe, or through to me. Feel free to link in with any of us and engage as well. I just wanted to thank you, Mahesh, for agreeing to join us and sharing your experience. It's very much appreciated, and your insights as well, Joe. Is there anything that we've missed from your perspective, Mahesh, that we've? No.
I think we've covered most of it. Obviously, people will go away and think about, what about this? Happy to answer that if anybody wants to contact me directly.
Fantastic. If anybody, as I say, anybody got any queries, please feel free to reach out to Joe, Mahesh, or I. And thank you very much for joining us. We wanted to keep this punchy and make sure that we deliver the right messaging, give everybody the support that they may need while making quite a profound decision for practices. Software and solutions form the foundations to any law firm. So as I say, make sure you make the right decisions for the right reasons, whether that's for efficiency, access, support, or whatever you need. But make sure you have your checklist that you go into in any demonstration to. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.